The following is an AZPM original production.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, an unusual art show at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum sees three artists combine their work to explore the infinite connections between the lives and deaths of animals and humans. And Katrina Kerstetter, our storyteller this month, shares how she brought back things she learned in South Korea to help make southern Arizona a better place. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. The current exhibition at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum Art Institute offers a deep exploration on a subject that some may find difficult: animals in death. Using flowers, stones, seeds, and the edible plants that many of these animals depended on in life, it shows how small memorials have been made to honor the contributions these animals make to our complex ecosystem. It's unlike any of the death rituals usually seen in folk art, and yet it draws on many of them. Next, I will have a conversation with the three artists who created Kindred Spirits, honoring animals in death.
Hi, I'm Hannah Sallier. I am calling in from my studio in Brooklyn, New York. I am an illustrator, a storyteller, and a sculptor. I like telling stories that focus on our connection as human beings to the other species with whom we share our planet.
Hi, I'm Rachel Ivani, and I am in and from Tucson, Arizona, and I am a mixed media artist. I like to focus in on conservation subjects, and I do painting, mixed media art quilts, and pretty much whatever subject inspires me, mostly animals and plants, but like Hannah, to connect people with nature.
Hi, my name's Amanda Stronza. I'm here in Tucson, but I live in Austin, Texas. I am an anthropologist, an environmental anthropologist. I am a professor in the Department of Ecology and Conservation Biology at Texas A&M. I am a photographer and a conservationist. Well, I should say that my passion is really about the relationship between humans and nature, specifically what shapes why and how, when and why we love certain species. And in this conversation, I am focused on creating memorials for animals I find killed on roads and sidewalks and on trails.
I think my starting point to this collective work, I thought about and often think about how broken humans are in relation to our death rituals, to our understanding of death, how we handle it, how we process it. We don't. We're terrible at it. And so I look at this work and I can understand how someone may say, these are just animals. These are just animals. They don't deserve this. But isn't it a stepping stone towards perhaps correcting some of our own oversights and understanding the cycle of life and death?
In some ways, all three of us think about and are concerned about the fact that we are averse to death, and thinking about death, we have so much fear. And in some ways, we're even more blind to the death of other animals. We see that there's a kind of human exceptionalism, that when we do pay attention to death and when we grieve beings we love, they tend to be the human beings. Maybe they are the cats and dogs who live in our homes, the ones we call pets. We grieve them as well. But all of us in some ways see that the wild beings who live among us, the wildlife, there's not necessarily a place to grieve their death.
Amanda, I don't know how long you've felt this way, but what was the first time that you took action?
I've always been inspired by the author naturalist Barry Lopez, who had a practice himself of lifting dead animals from roads and finding quieter places for their bodies to decay and rest. And so I knew that he had done that, and it's a practice that I've had for a long time. It just felt natural to me to, if I see a dead animal on the road, I can't bear to see the raccoon or the squirrel or the snake run over again and again and again. But there was a time in downtown Austin, Texas, when I found a squirrel on a trail. It wasn't even on the road. It was the hike and bike trail downtown. Maybe she had been hit by a bike or a stroller, I don't know, but people were just streaming by her, chatting with each other, walking with their dogs, pushing their kids in strollers, riding their bikes, treating her like she was nothing, like she didn't exist, like she was invisible. And so I felt compelled to take her off the trail. And it was a beautiful time of year. There were flowers around, and I thought she just looked so beautiful, even in her death. And I circled her body with flowers and acorns. I didn't want people to see her as just another dead squirrel, but she was someone who was worthy of our grief.
Hannah, did you have something you wanted to say? You can jump in.
Yeah, Amanda talks about this in her elegies, and Rachel and I, it's incorporated into the art, this idea of really seeing these other beings for who they are as individuals. I was thinking a lot in the development of these sculptures for the show, and as we were working together, about the kind of human lineage of art and art history, and how the first images we were making were of other species, and how the kind of systematic, very individualistic othering of these creatures were made to think of them as resources or as creatures who are not sentient, because it's easier. It's easier to just kind of look away. Amanda talks about that in her writing, really just sitting with a creature and taking a moment. And I think that's something that is really important in this moment, just across the board in our culture, in our world, like really deeply seeing each other and not jumping to preconceived notions or ideas.
Rachel, something that I have picked up on in your work, I initially became aware of your art through the illustrations you did for The Neotenant Queen, a book by Alejandro Canelos, which is about the secret inner lives of animals.
Yes.
And finding out that they're just as neurotic as the rest of us. And this is really a very highly evolved expression of that.
What has been inspiring to me about our kindred spirits of honoring animals in death, that we can elevate and show that they are just as worthy as us. And when we've displayed them in these settings, putting them, in galleries and art shows, that we bring people in to see, and some individuals we expect to get it, understand that, oh yes, these animals have their own lives. They deserve to be respected and honored and cherished just for being them. By putting all of them in these conversations and elevating and showing the beauty and doing it in a way where it makes people pause and look, they come closer, and people, will just come and they'll just pause and they'll read Amanda's stories. And that's been so helpful and uplifting to me when there's so much division and negative and everything, but it's just the beauty and the diversity and the individuality. And I found, as I didn't mention early on, but my science background, we were taught that all the, animals are, how do they help humans, and their data to be discovered and whatever, but each of those data points are individuals and they're special and unique, and we are expanding and expounding on that, and just allowing other people to come to their own conclusion versus, slapping them across the face,
And we also want people to know that what we have seen people experience is a kind of peace and a kind of catharsis even. It's not distressing to see this show, almost the opposite, that there is a feeling of, I think a lot of people experience a kind of ecological grief. We know that the world is broken in many ways, and seeing these ways of honoring animals and seeing them as kin can bring a kind of peace.
Rachel, would you say that the exhibit is suitable for family viewing?
I do feel it is appropriate for families. Young people, I've noticed, are much more comfortable with life and death, and they don't question it as much. And I think that, we show kids what we're taught, and, the separation. And so we had the great experience of seeing children come in, and they're so drawn to the animals. And there's not There's not blood and gore. Everything is done in a very respectful way. It's done with beauty and care, and we really try to honor them. But again, it's a big part of this is showing the beauty in life and death. And so the topics are hard. People will come, and it will bring up a lot of emotion, which again, we think that's a good thing. It will allow parents to have conversations because everybody loses a pet or somebody in their family, and so it's a nice bridge as well to talk about this and make it more approachable and show not be so separated in our lives.
Some kids that I work with who had seen this work, their parents sent me a photo of a memorial they had made for a dragonfly. So even down to every form, the smallest life forms, every life has significance.
Amanda, what is something that you've heard from a visitor after seeing the exhibition that you carry with you in your heart?
I love that on our opening night, we had an artist talk. The three of us, Hannah and Rachel and I, were able to talk with a big audience of visitors about why we created the show and what we hoped people would take from it. What people said to me, a number of people afterward, was that our title, Kindred Spirits, was really reflected in how they felt in seeing the show, that we felt connected with each other, connected in our feelings of grief and caring for animals, and that was a really meaningful thing for people. We have a guest book for visitors to sign, and I was there today, and I loved seeing the notes that children have clearly left. They say things like, "I'm sorry, Owl. Goodbye, Owl. I hope you have a peaceful death." And they draw little pictures, and so it's clear that the show has really meant something to young minds and young hearts.
When we turn our attention back to human beings, what is something that you would like to see change or evolve in the way we face death? Hannah, what's something that you think Kindred Spirits can teach?
Yeah, Mark, I think it's really interesting that you're bringing up these questions about kind of reflecting back our humanity. Because I think that's definitely a big part of what we're doing in the show, in the sense that we're really pushing back on the separation and the siloing of life that happens, that's kind of impressed upon us through capitalism, through so many other systems that benefit from that separation. I really hope that, through this work, it invites viewers in to think about how truly interconnected we all are.
And finally, Rachel, what's a lesson that you think Kindred Spirits has to tell?
The interconnectedness that we're all talking about, we as humans create a lot of barriers, physical barriers, emotional barriers, etc. And when we do those separations, it causes a lot of harm. And with the Kindred Spirits, I've noticed that it has allowed me to process my grief for humans in a way that I didn't before when I sit there with an animal. And I've noticed that it's allowing people to feel that connection. And, with this show, we are seeing a lot of people that talk about when they go into nature and realizing that some animals' nature is the side of the road. Wherever we are, that interconnectedness, and that when we feel for these little beings, we're then feeling for our fellow humans. And so it's allowing the continuum and the connection.
My guests were Amanda Stronza, Hannah Salyer, and Rachel Livani. Their collaboration, Kindred Spirits, Honoring Animals in Death, continues at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum Art Institute through July 13th. We have a link to view samples of the artist's work, including a virtual tour of the exhibition, on the Spotlight page at azpm.org. There's something powerful about a single voice sharing a true story. It gives a chance for the storyteller to let their personality shine and forge new connections with anyone who is listening. In support of this important community tradition, Arizona Spotlight is featuring a different storyteller on the third Thursday of every month. Here is Tony Paniagua to introduce us to this month's special guest.
Thank you, Mark. This month's storyteller is Katrina Kerstetter. She was born in Louisiana but raised in Tucson. As an adult, she began another chapter thousands of miles from Arizona, expanding her horizons along the way.
The name of my story is Taking Chances. In 2003, I was contacted by a friend who was teaching English in South Korea. She knew I was looking for a new opportunity and recommended I join her there. While unsure and a bit nervous, I took the chance. What was going to be a 1-year trip to South Korea to save up some money turned into over 20 years of opportunities I could never have imagined. I began work there as a teacher. I soon was hired by an international English academy to move to Seoul. There, I created curriculum and traveled the country teaching teachers. I went on to publish workbooks and later became vice director of an academy of over 500 students. The job opportunities kept coming, and I kept taking those chances. During that time, I also had opportunities to travel a great deal. I traveled all around South Korea and Japan and beyond. I went to Hong Kong, Bali, Taiwan, Cambodia, Thailand, New Zealand, Guam, and Vietnam. I was exposed to many other cultures, many other traditions, arts, and beliefs. My understanding of the world expanded. When you take chances and leave your comfort zone, you're forced to learn new ways to survive and to interact with people. You grow immensely if you just take those chances. Eventually, a friend, Mia Lee, and I were struggling with the burden that is put on Korean students to excel and compete for limited opportunities. Mia proposed moving to Jeju Island, South Korea, and opening a library. There, we would work with Korean students, but in a more mindful and engaging way, all while exposing them to the world. Openness, mindful learning, art, and critical thinking are the foundations of Koru. The students learn English, but they do so as a byproduct of expanding their view of the world and those around them. In 2018, Yemeni refugees began arriving on Jeju Island. We were introduced to a few families, and my first reaction was how traumatic this could be for the children. They'd made no choices. Suddenly, they were in a new country, surrounded by a new culture and language. We felt that we could have an influence on this core memory they were developing. We took them around the island, to the beaches, to amusement parks, to restaurants. We brought them to Koru Library to learn alongside the Korean students. And we helped the refugee children develop and share the skills and art that they had brought with them. It was a chance worth taking. Everyone grew and learned from this experience. During the pandemic, I was forced to travel back and forth to America due to visa restrictions. This entailed quite a few quarantines for 7 days at a time. I spent that time in quarantine working on my art. It was the freest I'd ever been to create. All of my experiences and travel and exposure came through in my art. On my trips to Tucson during that time, I realized that I wanted to do the same things here. I opened a nonprofit branch of Koru Multicultural and Diverse Library at the historic Y. There, we offer mindful learning classes and picture book art workshops. I contract with charter schools and public libraries in presenting these workshops as well. At the same time, I began volunteering at Iskashida Refugee Network. After a few years, I became more involved in their Refugee Garden Art Program, RGAP, which is held every Wednesday morning. I bring picture books and art supplies from my library, and at least once a month, after gardening, we read, share, and create. It is a mindful, peaceful time of community building. Through my work with Iskashida, I was contacted by Southwest Folk Life Alliance and Artists at Work. They offered and awarded me a W-2 salary and benefits for 18 months to deepen my art practice and work collaboratively with Iskashita. This new opportunity will allow me to continue learning about people and cultures from around the world while providing time to work on my art, which is deeply influenced by the chances I've taken, my experiences, and the people I've met along the way. Koru Library's Tucson branch will continue to offer picture book art workshops and to reach even more patrons. This new opportunity will help more people discover Koru. Koru libraries are curated, and we are lending libraries. We choose books from around the world and those with a focus on mindful and social emotional learning. I never want to stop taking chances. Every chance I've taken, successful or unsuccessful, has led me to where I am today. Through art, books, and exposure to others' lives, I grow, develop empathy, and expand my understanding of the world and those around me.
Katrina Kerstetter, thank you very much for your story. Let's learn more about this recognition from Artists at Work now. It's a national program that helps support artists and their communities. You are one of 4 artists chosen in Southern Arizona, and you'll get a living wage, health benefits, and basically peace of mind to pursue your interests without having to worry so much about paying the bills. What does this all mean for you?
It means a great deal, because when you're doing art or volunteering with someone, you always have that guilt that you should be working, you should be making money. And so now that's the way to make money. So it was overwhelming. It's going to be a great opportunity to pursue all the things I was poking at while I was trying to pay the rent and pay the bills.
In your story, you mentioned various projects and interests, including Koru Multicultural and Diverse Library. Where does the word Koru originate, and what does it mean?
The founder of Koru Library in Korea, Mia Lee, she went to university in New Zealand and spent a lot of time there. And it's actually a Maori word. It means new life, growth, strength, and peace. And it's also the fern, the spiral fern. And so that's kind of the logo, and that's where that comes from.
What do you do at Iskashita, and how will this opportunity with Artists at Work allow you to continue and perhaps build that program?
On Wednesdays at Iskashita Refugee Network, there's the Refugee Garden Art Program. And it's 3 hours, and 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. And we begin by gardening, and first half is gardening, and second half it can be drums, it can be mind-body art. And my involvement was on the third Wednesdays of the month, we would do art projects and books and expose a lot of the people there, refugees. Some of them have not even had books or libraries. Some of them have been in refugee camps for the last 20 or 30 years. So I wanted to expose them to books. We got a lot of wordless picture books, and we would go through the books and discuss or draw or find a way to express how those books made us feel. And that's what I did during my time at the garden. And then you mentioned, how will this help? I've been volunteering for the last 3 years and using supplies from my library. So this is going to help us grow that whole program, not just the Wednesdays I was doing. We're going to develop that, help in the garden and the art projects and the community building and the working with the refugees.
In your story, you visited multiple countries and other parts of the world. What would you like to say about those experiences?
And started in Korea, and when there's no English around, and I was always someone who didn't need anyone's help. Moved out when I was 18, and so starting in Korea, when I got there, all of a sudden I always needed people's help, and that really changed me. And it also made me more willing to go to these other countries and learn about things. I guess if you just stay in America, you think there's a way to do everything. But you learn about other cultures, and there's other ways to get things done, and it just really expands your mind and teaches you that there are more than one way to get things done and to treat people, and more than one way to show respect and those things.
Do you have a special memory from one of those trips? I know you must have many because you went to various locations, but does anything stand out that was funny or a little bit scary, or something that you say, hey guys, can you believe what happened to me in X country?
Cambodia was the most interesting in it, and we went to a lot of the ruins and the historical sites, and we rented some bikes and just riding across these, they just give you the bikes, you go wherever you want. So we were in villages and there were crops, and we were crossing some shaky bridges, and there are water buffalo sitting right there and doing all this work, and it just blew my mind that I was there in that time and space, and just seeing people working and different animals and different ruins and historical sites was mind-blowing.
Now that you're back in Tucson, you returned to Tucson approximately 2022, 2023. Have you been back to Asia, or are you basically concentrating on Southern Arizona for now?
So I go back every year to the original Quarter Library, and I'm going again this summer. And I bring things I've learned here and some art projects and bring it back to them. It's just good to see the kids again, the other teachers, and the parents of the students I've taught. Some of the students we taught since they were first grade, and now they're middle school, high school. So they've stayed with us that whole time, and I like going back and catching up with them.
You have actually seen the growth of these kids chronologically and perhaps emotionally and intellectually.
Yes, and social emotional learning was a big part of that, and they're all great kids, and we've seen some become great artists and creators, and just, I think, from what we've exposed them to and the chances we've given them, and it's amazing to have kept those kids for all that time. We're very honored.
We've talked about your projects in the community, but what about your art specifically? Are you a multifaceted artist? How do you describe yourself?
Yeah, I do a lot of mixed media. I like old things, rusty things, paper I find on the ground, and go from there. Whatever I see in it, then I take it a little further. I do a lot of repetition and pattern work because it's mindful to sit and do that kind of work. And I'm very glad that I get the opportunity to spend time doing that now and get paid.
And looking back, you must be pretty excited to know that you've been able to accomplish so much and continue to follow your passion.
I am. And it just all comes together. If you keep doing it, any of those things had changed, I wouldn't be where I am. So I'm very fortunate, definitely.
Katrina Kerstetter, thank you very much for joining us, and we wish you much continued success.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
If you'd like to learn more about the topics we mentioned, or Katrina Kerstetter and the other artists selected for the 18 months of salary and benefits, we'll have links on the Arizona Spotlight page at azpm.org. For Arizona Spotlight, I'm Tony Paniagua.
Thank you for listening. This show is a production of AZPM. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. Production assistance by Zoe Giuliano. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
AZPM podcasts are made possible in part by donations from listeners like you. Learn more at support.azpm.org. Thank you.